Well, been working on it, getting those edges sanded. I went out to the garage. I didn't set up the camera in there because, frankly, it's cold out there, and I didn't want to spend any extra time messing around with cameras out there. Anyway, I got the edges sanded, and just doing some little bit of finishing sanding, making it really nice. Got some 150 grit on a sanding block butt. And once it's the way I like it, I'm going to go ahead and bevel my edges and touch it up with some black dye on an old hard dauber. That makes it easier to not get the dye into my stitch line, because the stitches are white and I don't want to get the dye, the black dye, into my white stitches. Now I'm going to go ahead and bevel these edges. It's best to make sure your beveler is good and sharp. I use a diamond rod sharpener to sharpen it on the inside because mine's concave. And then I strop it. That makes it good, sharp, and it's polished in there. So it cuts through leather easily. And it gives a nice, clean, beveled edge. Okay, I'm going to get to that. Get these edges beveled, touch up the dye on it, let that dry, and then we could start with burnishing these edges. That is going to be a beautiful friggin' edge. Well, I gave the dye some time to dry and I've started burnishing on my edges. Let me give you a look quick. Basically, that's your before and after. Now this is just a water burnish. I'm going to come back after I get all the edges burnished. Put this stuff on. It's called gum tragacanth. And I'm going to come back and burnish them again. And that'll give me some really nice edges. Then after that, I'm going to go ahead and tan coat the whole thing. Now to burnish these edges, I just take a wet sponge and wet the edges. Let the water soak in a bit. Let me show you something here. Getting that piece on the front to fit just right blends it in on your edge, and I think that's a good look, because it kind of makes it look more like one unit instead of something stuck on top of something else. Alright, the water's in there, and just rub it with my burnisher. And you can see already I'm starting to get a shiny spot. So I'm going to continue doing that. And then we'll go ahead and gum trag it and burnish it some more. And then it'll be time to top coat this thing. There's really not that much of a difference between the gum trag side and the not yet gum trag side. The biggest difference is that I know that this side will stay burnished, at least until I get the tan coat put on it. The side that was just water burnished looks good, but I know that's not going to stay that way. So the gum trag basically helps to glue the fibers down. All you do, you just take your dauber and put a nice thin even layer of the gum tragacanth on it, on all the areas that you're burnishing. I like to give it a moment or two to soak in and to start drying a little bit. I found that works best for me. Anyway, after you give that a few minutes, actually that looks like it's about enough, you just come back with your burnisher and you start burnishing. Just pick a spot and go. And after a while, the gum trag will start drying a bit more. And right now it looks worse. But if you keep it up, you start getting that shine back. And the idea, like I said, is that the gum trag is good for burnishing because it'll hold down the fibers. And well, that's what it's good for. It's good for burnishing because it'll hold down the fibers. So I'm going to keep going with this, and then it'll be time to top coat this thing. So edges are going to look like that. Now the reason, usually when I work on something like this, I'll sand the edges before I stitch it. But on this one I didn't, because I knew that I was going to have to really waller out them stitch holes to get the stitches through, and that would distort the edges. And if I sanded it before I stitched it, then I would have uneven edges. They'd be kind of lumpy. And with an edge that wide, I don't want anything to affect the final look of the edge in any kind of a negative way. So, like I said, I'm going to keep on the burnishing, and we'll be back when it's time to top coat this thing. See you then.